Mr. Jack Douglas. How are you?
I'm good. Good to see you again.
Good to see you again. This one's a really exciting one because we have a track sheet. I mean, that's a huge deal.
Yeah, come on.
And it's How Do You Sleep?
This stuff came to us as 8 tracks. I transferred it from 8 track to 16 track. Then we mixed it. Then we transferred it a 2 track to 8 track. Again, back to 8 track.
Yeah.
And did our string overdubs on the 8 track. So it went 8 track, 16 track, 8 track, 2 track.
It's quite a few iterations.
Yeah. Well, first of all, when Roy would do a transfer.
This is Roy Sakala.
Yeah. Roy Sakala, when he would put a Pultec on the sync head so that he was making up for anything that was going on in the sync head as it was going over. So he would pretty much, you wouldn't know that it bounced around. And John was like, oh, only 3 generations, no problem. We're used to 6. You know, it's like, so it was never a problem to do that. It just never lost anything. Maybe it added something, I think, the loss. 8 to 16. 16, I think we went right to this 8 track with the mix.
So this is the record plant?
Yeah, record plant, New York. And if you look up here, which you'll see later, you'll see the producer was a guy named P. Spector.
P. Spector.
Yeah, this is my handwriting. No one seemed to mind. Artist, John Lennon. Client, Apple Records. Master take 4 and master take 3. And the names are Sakaliakis, and there wasn't room for me to put Douglas, so I just put JD. If we go back one, here's a tape box, the final takes, and this is the 8 track. You'd see here complete takes 1, 2, 3, and then 4 would be a complete take and a playback. PB means playback. Mm-hmm. And then I would put M for master, right. And then HTL meant head and tail leaded. And it's the same thing. How Do You Sleep only took 3. Now we're talking about the strings going on over the 3rd take of the string.
How are the strings being monitored? Do they have the speakers in the room?
No, they
were on headphones?
No, the conductor had one small speaker.
Yeah.
And the first chair to each section had headphones.
Okay.
That's all it took.
So the first chair is the only one on headphones, and the other guys or girls that are playing along are just playing because
to the conductor. Yeah.
Okay.
Who was pretty much conducting to your first chair.
Amazing.
Yeah. Studio A at Record Plant, and it was a dead room.
Yeah.
And what we used to do is we used to put plywood on the walls. Just come in and put plywood everywhere.
Because it was too dead?
It was too dead to liven the room up. No decatries. We'd go over each in the sections.
So this on these stems, this is called song.
So let's talk about this delay on his vocal. He said, you have ATD, and we all scratched our heads and didn't want to act like fools. And of course, Roy said, we can get it.
Yeah.
There was no digital delay at that time. So Roy goes to maintenance and says, what do we do? And so they built us a machine. They took a 4-track that could run at 30 IPS. And they put a capstan doubler, a fat capstan. So now it was running at 60 IPS. We had to get transcription reels because the thing would run so fast. You put a VFO on it, a variable speed, a VSO, a variable speed oscillator.
Yep.
We called it VFO, variable frequency oscillator. You put that on the motor, and then you could control how fast you wanted it so that it would be in time. So you could take it 60, and you could take it up then from 60. So once you took it up to 60, you were pretty much doubling it. Then Paul Prestopino, who built this monstrosity, said, if I put 2 playback heads on this close together, which he did, put 2 playback heads on it. So there's a record head and 2 playback heads. And then if you put this dial on top of it with a rod that pushed the tape between the 2 heads, now you had flanging instantly. You could return 2 stereo tracks. There's a 4-track. and you could just do this incredible sound.
So you had these two heads, and this rod could push the tape backwards and forwards to vary
between the
this.
two heads, instant flanging.
Which machine? You may have already said. I'm sorry. Which machine was it? An Ampex?
It was an Ampex, either a 440 or a 300. I think it was a 300 deck. You know, with the baseball bat that you used to go back forward and rewind to slow it down. And you know, you'd be working with John on something, and Roy might send the echo over to this thing, and you would be cranking this big dial, you know, back and forth. Anyway,
in real time.
Yeah, in real time. Yeah, and John just thought that it was like, oh, you have one. Oh, you have one. You know. Meanwhile, it was probably Paul Prestopino probably worked on that thing for 20 hours straight to get that thing to work like that. But it was, and the capstan was like so big. But you had to have these giant tapes on it, and you had to be ready to just, when that thing ran out, God help you if it ran out during a performance. So you would constantly be looking at the thing and sweating, and then you'd have to send a signal to Roy, like stall for just like, you know, 10 seconds while I flip this tape over through the other way. I don't know, you know, why that vocal is. What else is on that?
Well, we have separated drums by the looks of it. Let's have a listen.
No. I think that's not Alan on this track.
Pretty tied.
Yeah. I think that's Jim.
You think it's Keltner?
Yeah. Because what happened was when they got over to New York, a lot of stuff was recorded in Dittenhurst, in his house, really. They converted it to, and once he got to New York and he saw the studio facility and what he could do there, a lot of stuff was redone, and Jim came in, and Klaus Vormann. So they started to re-record stuff. I mean, Imagine is a re-record. And that piano is still around.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Who has it?
It's at Iwi in New Jersey. A beautiful big room. Because Roy started that place.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, and he brought over a bunch of equipment. So before the auction, he just moved a few things out.
just a couple of things.
Yeah, like
just a couple of things.
The piano. And I had lunch with Jimmy Iovine a few days ago, and he said, "Jack, remember this?" And we went into his room, and there was the black Mellotron that John had stored, which was the Mellotron, the double keyboard, big monstrous thing that the Beatles used. And he got it, and he brought it over, and John had a vault at the record plant in the basement, and it was a sealed, real vault, and in there was, which we would frequently go down and listen to some of the things in there.
Oh, I'm sure.
He had all the 3-track Shea Stadium tapes and instruments and that Mellotron, which I think Jimmy got at auction. It used to be cool to go down there.
I can only imagine.
Put up a Shea Stadium tape and listen to the actual performance, you know. It was like pretty cool stuff.
Unbelievable. What an incredible live band.
Yeah.
So
yeah. No, you know, basically no monitors. Just
hoping for the best.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is this George?
John. That's John. I think Jesse Ed Davis is on this one too. Yeah.
So Beatley. Da 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 da.
What a great rhythm player.
Unbelievable.
Oh. What a deep groove, huh?
Yeah. Is this Foreman? Klaus Foreman on bass?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Klaus was the only bass player on it.
I always thought Georgia played on this song.
I think he did, but I think he played on it in England and not.
Not the final version.
When I was doing the transfer, at this song, when I did the first transfer of it, I was like, is he singing about Paul?
I was going to wonder whether we were going to touch on that. I didn't want to start that conversation.
Wow. And so that was always a mystery that I never went to with John about that relationship until that video, which I think I showed you once, where he starts talking about Paul, where he confesses to the fact that he loved him as a brother and that he could take the piss out of him anytime he wanted to. Whether we got it or not, is something else. So it sounded like there was just, apparently he enjoyed that. That's more English than it is American, that kind of piss taking. But that video is wonderful, where that's the Playboy interview. I did show it to you.
You did. You showed it to me a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Somebody had found the video cassettes.
Yes, they had been discarded and were marked.
From like 1980.
Yeah, were marked TBE, to be erased. And the reason they were to be erased is because in the video, Yoko was sleeping on a couch.
I remember, yeah.
So she didn't want, she didn't want anybody to see her sleeping on a couch
while
we were working.
Yeah.
And so that was the Shift, or whatever his name was, came in to do the Playboy interview. And he was so petrified at sitting with John.
At the console.
Yeah, at the console, that John actually had to he had to prime him to get the interview started, because the guy was shaking. He was terribly frightened.
Well, it was a big deal. I mean, he's back in the studio after not recording for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Which probably felt like an eternity.
To him it did,
yeah.
Certainly, and to us too.
And who was filming it again?
Bob Gruen.
Bob Gruen, very famous photographer.
Yeah. Bob, it was his birthday, John's birthday. The birthday cards are on the console. And
there's a reflection in that video of Bob Gruen holding the largest video camera from 1980, this, and he's holding it like this.
And it's got a monitor that pops out. It was the first one that had a monitor on it, and he gave that to John for his birthday. So he came in. I took it away from him, and I took video of Bob Gruen, and then John was doing this interview. So Bob Parks.
Wait, this is John's birthday?
It's John's birthday.
In 1980?
Yeah, he was 40.
Oh, so this is only a few days before he died.
Well, it was sometime. It was October. It's a month.
Like a month or so.
Yeah, two months.
Wow.
So his birthday card is on the console. My gift to him was about 40 cassettes of the hidden microphone tapes that he didn't know about, but had asked for. It was kind of a nudge, nudge, wink, wink situation. After the second day of recording Double Fantasy, he said to me, not always the best things are said out in the studio. Sometimes they're said in the control room or anywhere else. You never know where someone's going to say something that's really interested. And he was so interested in documenting everything about that went on in the sessions, including the journal that was kept. But to him, the idea of having these audio of everything. So, that's what he said. And so I hid microphones. I hid microphones everywhere. They were in the control room. They were in his vocal booth. They were out in the room. They were in the bathroom. They were in maintenance. They were in his little private room that he liked to go in while I was comping vocals. He would go into this other room and just hang out. I put a piano in it, and it was very comfortable. Had a couch, and he could just hang out. And so there were, again, 2 mono transcription tape machines in a room that was being fed with all of these, just everything went into this thing, these machines. And every once in a while, the guy would have to go down just to make sure it flipped over. But they ran so slow that basically you got 10 hours out of one reel. And so for his birthday, his 40th birthday, I don't know, I can't remember how long it took to transfer all those things, but I had somebody working around the clock to transfer all those tapes to cassettes up to that point, since end of July, and they wheeled them in. And I said, "Well, remember what you said about everything being said?" And he couldn't believe it. He started listening to them right away. As soon as he got home, he was like, "Oh, this is incredible!" All the things that are said out there. Because every night after the session, he sat for an hour or sometimes 2 in the control room when the actual date was over, and just put his feet up and talked to us about everything, about politics, about the Beatles, about Hamburg, Germany, about being a father now, about everything. He just sat there and talked and passed a pipe with some good grass in it. and it was, all that stuff was there. And every once in a while, bits and pieces show up online as they have a name for it, the hidden recordings or something. But someday, I hope, you'll be able to get all, 1,000 hours. I mean, they talk about content. When we went to Record Plant to do Walking on Thin Ice, I, again, bugged the control room, the live room, and recorded right up to the very last day. And the last day tape I destroyed because I just couldn't bear it. When you take a reel of tape and you take it by the hub and you pick it up and knock it like this, and it just all falls off like that. That's what I did with that reel of tape. I also gave him a pair of, Lee DiCarlo and I went to Harvey Music, which was the big hi-fi dealer, and gave him the first pair of wireless headphones. It wasn't Bluetooth, it was just a transceiver, and he could plug this thing into his stereo at the headphone jack, and it would transmit to the headphones. They were Sennheisers. They sounded pretty good. He thought it was like magic. I can walk around the house and listen to music.
Wireless headsets. I remember this.
Yeah.
With the aerial on.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. What Roy used, and he used one of 2 mics in a bass drum that I could never get them to work. He would take a surgical hose.
Yeah.
And wrap surgical hose around the tuners of a bass drum.
Yeah.
Okay. And then he would attach the surgical hose to a hub, a steel hub, a tape hub. And then he had drilled holes in the tape hub, very much like how you stand a Christmas tree up.
Yeah.
With like 3 screws.
Uh-huh.
And he would put either a 57 or an EV666 into that, screw it down, and that's how he got his bass drum sound.
I have no idea how that would work.
The
Sounds like magic.
The mic was suspended.
Oh, I see now.
The rubber hose would come down.
I get it now.
He connected it all, and this mic was suspended.
I see.
So for some reason he had this theory that you didn't put a bass drum mic on a mic stand because the vibrations of the mic stand had nothing to do with the vibrations of the bass drum.
I understand.
So the bass, you can't knock it.
It sounds like an amazing crackpot idea.
Yeah.
Like, I love it.
Yeah.
Just
the look of it.
the look of it sounds incredible.
Yeah, and I mean, I remember having to put these. I mean, he didn't use a front head. He covered the front head. He covered the bass drum in a tunnel like we do very much now. But he had to suspend that mic, and his mic choices.
Wow.
Yeah, they're great mics. Yeah. You see, but they don't have a whole lot of real bottom, but they have all that 80 and 100 cycle stuff.
Right.
That's which is what you hear.
Yeah, especially right at the top.
Yeah.
Groove is so good. Do you think that's Keltner?
There's no real low bottom there, but that you can't kill that bass drum. It's there, it's.
What's on the toms?
87s.
87s.
If he had a drummer with 2 rack toms and a floor, he would just put the 87 in a figure 8 and put it like this over the 2 toms.
The 2 racks.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's good stuff and it still works.
One thing we've touched upon is that there's some very famous video documentary done of this being recorded in England.
Right. Above Us Only Sky, which is on Netflix now, is really amazing to watch.
It's amazing to watch, but the final recording that is here is actually done in New York.
Well, some of it is. In this case, the only thing that is redone in New York is the piano.
Oh, okay. Which is actually quite a big deal.
Yeah.
And
the vocal.
And the vocal,
yeah.
Which is also a big deal. So the only thing that was redone is the 2 most prominent elements.
Yeah. And this, because the strings were done here in New York.
So strings, piano, and vocal were redone in New York. And then the original Alan White drums and the Klaus Voormann bass were from England.
Yeah.
And this is John playing piano on the final version.
Yes. On the Studio B Steinway.
Amazing.
Yeah, which is now in New Jersey.
Now the stems we have the drums separated, which would be fun to listen to for a second.
Yeah. Nice tight.
Beautiful.
That's Alan.
It's all the bleed in the room with them all playing together.
Yeah. Oh, and that room was tiny. But there's that little booth for Alan.
And then we've got Klaus on bass. We love the way it comes in on the climb down.
Yeah. What a great player. All feel. It's so iconic, and it wasn't realized at the time at all.
You just thought it was a song you were working on?
Yeah. But everybody knew it was special. But not John. I don't think John did.
John didn't?
Yeah. It's interesting that Yoko finally got credit as a co-writer.
Oh, okay.
Because if you know her and if you know just some of the things she's written, that phrase, imagine no religion, imagine, that's very much like a Yoko book or poem. But no one ever thought of that later. But, it becomes obvious at some point. That's her. It's the way she talks. It's the way she writes. She now has co-writing credit. And it's probably really well deserved.
You would know better than anyone.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I saw them interact many times. It was, at first it was like hard to understand. And John took me aside once and said, "You've got to think backwards to understand everything about her and our relationship. Don't think so Western." A lot of times, especially working with her, I would wonder. And the one thing that why we worked together, although John trusted me to work with her, but I had said to her privately when talking about her music that I didn't care if she got inside the piano and played it or sat at the stool. I was half kidding, but she said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't matter to me." And she said, "That's good to know." Not that she ever got inside a piano, but I recall building forts for her to climb inside and have orgasms in. Because she would say, "That's the only way I can really get this across is to actually have an orgasm." But I would like a little privacy. Hey, that's art. People thought Picasso was crazy. But it's funny, I still have a relationship with her. And we email on a regular basis. It's really fun to get emails from her. Her health is getting, she's getting up there. But she's still sharp. And she's given my daughter some great interviews for my daughter's magazine. I actually helped her career when she was a budding art journalist.
Well, this is beautiful.
This piano, this is small. It's a 7-foot Steinway.
Oh, it's a 7-foot Steinway.
Yeah.
That's pretty big.
No, a 9-foot is big.
Oh, a 7-foot's big for me.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
it's not the full-blown 9-foot. But
yeah, it's not the full-blown one.
Yeah.
The original piano in England was a 9-footer. And there was a 9-foot Steinway in Studio A that he sat at that piano one night with Bowie in the room and they wrote Fame. It was kind of fun to watch that go down.
I'm sure.
But he loved the Studio B piano. I'll send you some pictures of he and Mick playing the same piano, that B piano he loved.
Love to see it.
He and Mick both on the same piano. That same jam session, you see Mick and John. I was doing the session, and Mick and John you rarely saw John playing a full Les Paul. And he was playing a nice, 59 Les Paul. So was Mick playing a Les Paul. It was kind of cool. After we did these sessions, Record Plant New York became home for John and Yoko and Apple. For example, shortly after we did, I think, Happy Christmas, John came in one night and said to me, "Have you seen El Topo? This movie, El Topo."
What's El Topo?
Well, down the village, at the Elgin Theater was the first theater to do these midnight shows. And there was a movie playing called El Topo on Saturday nights at midnight. And John and I had seen it. When John came in to ask me if I'd seen El Topo, I said, "Absolutely, one of my favorite movies." And so he said, "Wow, really? You've seen El Topo?" I said, "Yeah, I love it, man. It's a great movie." So he said, "I'm going to buy it." I'm going to buy the rights to that movie. And he did. He bought El Topo. And then he came in to me one day and he said, I bought it. But the original soundtrack, the original music to it is all scraggly and scratchy, but it's gorgeous. And the director wrote the music. It's a Mexican guy. And Jordanowski. It's not a Mexican name, but that was his name, Jordanowski. So he said, I'd like to re-record all of the music. And so Jay Messina and I, with John producing, and Jordanowski himself, a maniac of a guy, in the room with us with a small string ensemble, and we re-recorded all the music to El Topo. You folks might want to look up El Topo.
I'm going to be looking up El Topo.
Yeah. So it became, record plant became a place where he could do whatever he wanted.
Could be himself.
Yeah, and he could count on Roy and Shelley and myself to do whatever he wanted to do. In the case of a film score, I mean, Jay was the guy to do film score stuff because he understood more about locking things up than anyone else in the room. He was the jingle guy. John would show up. I would be doing a session with someone, some rock group, and John would just barge into the control room and leave everyone in the room in shock.
Sure.
You know, he would just barge in and go, hey, you know, a great example of this would be he had done the rock and roll album. I was out here doing Alice Cooper and Hanging with the original Hollywood Vampires. He talked me into coming out here to do the record, but he was out here during that period, going out of his mind, basically. And so they were down at A&M recording the rock and roll album with Phil shooting guns, and it was madness. But anyway, he got it done. And
but anyway, shooting guns.
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah. He pulled the gun out and shot into the ceiling. There were a lot of misadventures on the making of that record, but he got it done. And he came back to New York, and now I'm in New York and I'm mixing somebody's record. The album is finished and mixed, and he barges into the control room to tell me he's finished the record. Oh, so I asked everybody to leave because I wanted to talk to him, and they staggered out. Yeah, excuse me. And he sat down and he said, so I've finished the record, and he had a 7.5 of it. And he said, and guess what? He said, I'm going to play it for Morris Levy. Now, in England, you see, Morris Levy was a legend because his name was on everything. Mm-hmm. You know, as the writer, as the producer, but he was a gangster, is what he was. He owned Roulette Records. He was a thug. And he would just tell you, hey, here's $2,000. I wrote the song, okay? Okay. You know, so that was, and he would put his name down. You know, he wouldn't know a D from a C. He was a thug and a gangster and a murderer. And so, but to John and everybody in England, he was a god like Phil Spector. So he said, I got invited up to Morris's farm. He had a farm upstate New York. He wants to listen to what we've done, and a lot of these songs are his. Either he published them, or he wrote them, or they were on Roulette. So I said to him, well, that's great, John. And I didn't want to really blow it up. But I said to him, whatever you do, don't leave the tape. Make sure he listens to it, okay? Make sure he listens to the tape. You, in front of you. Why? No, just
trust me.
Do me this favor. So he thought it was odd, but he said, okay, all right, you know. And he left. And then I saw him a week later. Again, barged into the control room, and he said, I think Morris loves it. I said, what do you mean you think he loves it? He said, well, we just hung out, and he didn't have time to listen to it, so I had to leave it with him. I said, oh, God, no. He said, that's not good. A week later, it was on television, on Adam 8, Morris's son's label. John Lennon sings the hits of the... They sold 1 million records on TV before they could injunct it. I think at that point, John had another level of trust for me. But God, it was awful. You know, don't leave the tape. But
there's a story around that which is quite a lot more professional that they tell, but this sounds a lot more realistic.
Oh, it's absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think the Wikipedia version is that, I can't remember reading about this because you and I have talked about this before. The Wikipedia version is like it was part of the deal that he was allowed to release it.
Oh, no.
I can't remember.
It was they had to injunct it. But the damage, well, whatever damage was done, you know, a lot of records were sold on television for $10. Oh, my.
The wild, wild west of rock and roll.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I have to admit that the record industry was more fun when it was run by gangsters than it was, because the gangsters put music people in charge, for the most part. These little labels, you know, there were real, the money was you know, gangster money. But the people they put in charge were real music people, either arrangers or players or people who really knew about how the industry worked. And after the bean counters got hold of it, it changed so drastically to, you know, and evolved to where it is now. There's one thing I respect about, among other things, that I respect about Jimmy Iovine and how he ran his business, is that he ran it like a person who understood music, you know. And Warner's was like that too. They had music people running it, but after a while, it wasn't any fun. That's why I like the indies are the best, as you well know. You do work a lot with the indies.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah, the money's not the same.
But I think the money's there for the big labels either more. Anyway,
Yeah.
not for the kind of music that we love.
Yeah.
Let's pull up some more songs. Well, thank you ever so much for this one.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Thank you.
Brings back great memories.
Please leave a bunch of comments and questions below. Thank you ever so much for watching.